Today we're taking a big step in the expansion of Easthaven County by laying the foundations of a brand new city on an undeveloped island, preparing for a massive expansion with extensive infrastructure. But before we get into that, there's been yet another troubling development. Last night, all the company vehicles belonging to Michael & Sons Carpentry, the main contractor behind the new school in Queen's Cape, were torched. Why this particular business was targeted is still unclear, but maybe there's something about that specific project that made them stand out. Let me know if you've got a theory. And speaking of theories, shout out to Victor Canito, who might be the first to connect the black SUV spotted circling the Cape Rose house before the Mass Capital CEO's death in episode 38, with this black SUV seen illegally parked outside the Fort John Social Club in episode 37. And this plot is getting serious. Welcome to Easthaven County. Oh man, that intro. I think we're gonna lighten up the mood a little bit before we get on with these infrastructure projects. But before we get that far, there's actually a serious matter we gotta handle. Because following the most recent vote, where you guys voted to immediately launch an investigation into the Batman Police Strike Force team, these guys were tipped off pretty quickly, and they're now sitting tight as long as the investigation is ongoing. Which effectively means that any benefit we might have derived from this overtime pay of our police and administration service budget is now gone. And it's a bit unfortunate because we still have a pretty sizable crime rate, and we know that the initial drop we saw was because of the Batman guys. So if you've got an idea for how we could handle this, seeing as we're already investigating corruption as well, so both investigations could now draw out, please let me know, because I'm out of ideas. Anyways, let's lighten up the mood a little and build some infrastructure. That's gonna make everyone happy and careless. And we've got a pretty good setup already. We obviously have the Massachusetts Route 28 cutting through the area, connecting with the bridge here. And then we've got the tunnel we built a couple of episodes ago, which also provide adequate freight rail traffic to any new industrial clusters we might build out here. And I think the most important thing we can do, as a starter at least, is just get a couple of main avenues and arterials to just kind of cut through this area. I imagine the downtown of this new city is going to sit right along here, and then make sure we've got proper connections on both ends here. I'd like to do some really complex stuff here, maybe even a couple of interchanges too close together that are known locally, maybe even nationally, as a bit of a mess. These things do exist in real life, not just in the US, but across the planet, so why not create one right here? So what I'm thinking is that if I branch a couple of big arterials through here in relatively close proximity, and then insist on trying to create an interchange for both of them, it is going to turn into a mess. That's the point I'm trying to make, at least. So the very first thing we're gonna do is just grab the 4-lane two-way highway. Gonna enable contour lines, although it is quite hilly, so yeah, I mean, we're just gonna move through, and then we can always use move it to change a thing or two if necessary. But the first one we're just dragging through is going to be something like this. Let's see, I'll enable this one so that it automatically gets kind of sunken with some retaining walls. Not sure I want that. We can do some terraforming to change that, but this is just to get an idea of the layout. And then I guess my idea is to have another arterial very close that maybe just moves underneath this segment. So as you guys can see, you would ordinarily probably not create on and off ramps for both of these. Or in the case of the US, maybe you would. I'm always surprised when I look at Google Maps at how many chances of adding on and off ramps US highway engineers have taken out of the possibilities they had. It's almost like the US highway system was meant to kind of prop up the economy. Anyways, let's get rid of the retaining walls that were automatically generated here, because I do think they unfortunately don't look all that great always in game. Although I should say, if you have issues with weird shadows when you create retaining walls, then move into options and disable the checkmark that says cast shadows on terrain or something like that. We can now branch these into the existing road layout I have here, which is relatively simple. So actually, let's just do a little cleanup. I think we're gonna keep the main avenue here though. We're just gonna upgrade it to an actual avenue instead of having it be a highway, because obviously zoning wise that's gonna be a bit tricky. And then we're just gonna continue this enabling contour lines, and we'll need to maybe connect to this one. Let's see what we do with this one. We'll add a simple curve so that it doesn't get too gritty. Let's see if we can start with something fun for this connection. I think we're gonna make not a roundabout, because it's not gonna be round, but a something thingy. Yeah, I mean, that's not very descriptive, I know, but hopefully it's gonna look fun at the end of this. So let's just see what we can create here. And I hope the general shape of it is ringing a bell now and you understand the idea I'm trying to go for here. Something like this, and then we'll use the highways as well for connections. We can always, you know, we can actually upgrade this to like regular roads if we want to zone near it, but I'm thinking right now maybe there's some industry or something here, so it isn't a super desirable place in the first case. So I don't think we need it, but we'll just do our best. We probably need a complex curve here. Yeah, let's just do a 180, move real close, and see if we can get a smooth connection. Oh man, I love the road building tools in this game. Not a wacky spontaneous idea, but what if we had some freight rail tracks going underneath here and had sort of a yard here, maybe some industry? It would add some complexity because we gotta bridge it from all the way over here, but I mean, it sounds like fun, so let's just do it. So we are grabbing the vanilla electrified ones. Let's just make sure that we've got a parallel situation. We're gonna say ground, constant slope, and then we're going to move that to 875, disable snapping, and let's just do it as like a simple curve, move underneath this segment, just like that. And I'll just do a quick connection to the spot up here. And if you feel that it's a little daunting to do very complex infrastructure and lots of rail and stuff moving through your future city when you lay down the foundations, then I totally get that. And sometimes I like to keep things more simple as well. But I would advise you try it out, because what I often find is that it also kind of helps define some of the borders of the city. And that is something I have talked to great length about as being something that's important, for me at least, when starting a new city. So, you know, as I start mapping out this infrastructure, of course it makes it more complex, but it also helps define in my mind where the downtown is going to sit, where the industry is going to sit. You know, we're starting to kind of close in on this space because we obviously have some geographical boundaries in terms of the river and some of these like peninsulas and bay areas, but we're also starting to have some infrastructure boundaries that can really help. Yeah, just my 2 cents. Let's see, we've got a couple of segments here to turn into elevated segments, moving across the train tracks, and things are starting to look like a ton of fun now. I think we're just about ready to make a real mess of this place, but before we get that far, I want to branch out with just a few more main arterials here, just to kind of get the shape complete, I guess. So just grab a simple 4-lane road. It's not important which type I use, it's just the width that I'm using, which is important because then we can always just change it to a different configuration. And I'm thinking that somewhere centrally alongside this avenue, we're going to just branch out. And are we going to have 2 at-grade crossings? No. Change of plans, we're branching out here so we can get away with 1 at-grade crossing. See, I am financially responsible after all. And then I think we're going to bring another one through here. It's going to automatically create a bridge segment, which is perfectly fine. I should have enabled contour lines because I don't actually know how crazy the contours are here. But it seems like it's okay. And then we're going to make this a major intersection, I think. And we're just going to bring this down to the waterfront, quote unquote. I guess that's what you could call it, but I don't know how much industry is going to be here or how desirable it's going to be, rather. And then I think just to kind of change the look here, we're going to grab this 2-lane divided avenue from, I think this is a road builder. Yeah, it is. And I'm going to do just kind of freeform something like this. Cut through here and then maybe another at-grade crossing. Moving into this space, and it looks really barren, but once again these things are gonna help shape this area. They're gonna help me map out the downtown layout and figure out where everything's gonna sit. All right, let's see. A little note, all the people here walking, they're leaving town. I think they're former homeless people, I'm not quite sure, but they're not really commuters, so yeah. We'll have to ignore that. Something I think I need to do is jump into Road Builder first, because we do have a 5-lane async version of this one, so that we can have an on or an off ramp, but we can't really have both at the same segment. And I think I'd like both. So I'm gonna grab the 4-lane vanilla version here, and then I think we're gonna use Road Builder to very simply just add an additional lane on either side. Oh, and it can be a bus enabled lane, why not? And then we're just gonna call this the, let's see, the 6-lane 2-way highway, and we're not gonna do any changes. It's fine as is. And then we're gonna click on it and we're gonna say place more, and we're going to upgrade, let's see, probably this segment right here. Yoink. Now, it isn't a bridge or an elevated segment anymore, but I think that's fine, and I might even do the same to this segment here, which is going to seem odd, but in my experience, it's a little easier to get the connections looking all right and then upgrade afterwards, after I've added the connections. That's my experience, at least. I'm not even sure. Oh, the elevation here is going to be a little rough, so we're definitely going to be abusing the constant slope tool here. And then let's just bring the ramp a little back, and we're just going to use the complex curve tool, and it's 7.2%, which is perfectly fine. So no worries. We'll see if we can find about the same spot on this side and kind of do much of the same layout. It's 10.2 here, which again is, I think, is tolerable. And obviously we'll need to flip some directions here so things look a little better. And we'll see if my point about building this and then elevating it is actually gonna be, I just think that's easier. There's something about working with already elevated segments that just makes it a little harder, but this one almost seems to work in the first try, basically. I'm actually starting to fear that this is just gonna look normal, and Nice. Because we need an off ramp from the eastbound direction, and we need an on ramp to the westbound direction, and we've got plenty of space to just do that here. No fuss, no craziness. So I'm gonna have to be more creative to invent my own craziness on this one. I'm gonna have to really think about this. Because for now things are gonna be not crazy enough, I guess. Let's think out of the box for a moment here. We are going to have a 4-lane highway that is gonna move down to. It's gonna cut through here. So let's just try it out. And we're gonna move across the train tracks. Oh yes, and then we're just gonna move through this little area between the little lake here and then down to the waterfront. We're gonna make sure that this is an elevated segment, and then we're gonna make sure you can get onto this highway or national road from Route 28, at least in the eastbound direction, and from this highway segment as well. So at least that's gonna add some fun to this, because we'll upgrade the... Oh, wait. Let's see. I'm gonna be dependent on the traffic mod now, I think, to fix things up. And what I mean by that is that if I upgrade this segment, then what I want is, of course, to have an off-ramp here that's going to connect right over here. Try and do something like this. Oh, it actually did fix. So as you guys could probably see, the innermost lane of the 3 lanes here wanted to do a U-turn, but as I added the off-ramp, the game automatically adjusted it so that is no longer the case. So that's pretty cool, and hopefully I can just get this adjusted to look all right. Oh yeah, we are getting there now. Then we just need to elevate these segments, and we'll make sure you can get onto, if you want to get onto this main arterial from Route 28, what you'd appreciate, I think, is for an easy connection to this segment over here. So that's gonna connect down below here, and then we'll need a direct connection up to this one as well from this crossing, and we'll do a complex curve. Click once, twice, actually twice, and try and bring that in. Yoink. And then these lanes, these lanes will need to move underneath. So we'll have one that splits off and moves underneath all these ramps. I'll have to adjust that, it seems. And then we'll have one that just connects to the intersection we've got down here. And now, I think this one should probably connect over here and maybe enable a U-turn onto what's now called Florence Highway, so you can get onto both of these fairly easily. Yeah. Oh man. Now this is more like it. Oh yeah, I'm very happy. Way too vanilla at first. Now we've got a mess on our hands, and it prompted me to create even more roads and make easier connections. So it's all good. Very nice. If you're wondering how quick the Easthaven underworld has been to react to this silent strike by the Batman task force, wonder no more. They've been pretty quick.
What line of work are you in? waste management consultant.
Just gonna see if I can get a few more pillars placed in here. And then I think we're jumping on to the actual road layout for the new city, which should be fairly interesting. Now I should say, I don't know if this... Actually, I think this is going to be an independent city, although it means that Easthaven has a very high concentration of cities in a very small area, which is not completely out of the ordinary, but it is a bit of a special situation. So I do imagine that lots of things are coordinated on the county level and between the cities, just like the Batman task force, of course. So yeah, one thing before we get going, I need a name for this. A name and a backstory. So many major cities spawned throughout the area, Fort John being the biggest one, of course, and we've already discussed that the bay here, now the Back Bay, or actually geographically the Johns Bay, was a great place for harboring ships, offloading, unloading resources, because it's pretty sheltered from the Atlantic. But why did this city grow? Is pretty much what I'm asking, and what name did it get? If you've got ideas, let me know. I'd like some input on that one. I haven't really thought of anything, to be honest. But I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a pretty narrow, slightly typical grid for some of the city. But we're also gonna break it up, taking some inspiration from cities that have kind of specialities surrounding their grid, making them more interesting. So I think something I would like to do is to have maybe like a long, slender park kind of cutting through this new city. So if we were to grab the, let's see, the 2-lane one-way roads, for instance, and we just create something, let's see, how much do we need? 4 tiles deep. I think that's sufficient for this park. We just kind of move through this area with this setup. Then we've got a park space designated in here as a starter, and just that small, addition is going to make the road layout and the actual city feel more interesting. Although I should probably get some of this stuff cleaned up. But I do think parts of this calls for a little time lapse, so let's just jump into it. I think we've got ourselves a pretty interesting road layout, and I think it's pretty, it's at least pretty visible where the downtown is gonna sit and where the roads, you know, and the distance between the roads just get a little wider as we spread out to some suburban areas. And these alleys, I use them because I'm thinking that just like Fort John and the other cities of Easthaven, it's going to be a pretty old city, probably more than 300, maybe 350 years old, which is quite old by US standards. So I really want some tight-knitted small streets in here in the downtown and lots of the northeastern region pack row housing. But before we actually start the city and start developing it, which is probably going to be in the next episode, I want to get our unemployment rate a little more under control because it's currently rising. It's sitting at 12.5%. And what that means is that my residential demand isn't maxed out at all. And I need it to be maxed out when we start developing this city. Otherwise, it's just going to look like an empty patchwork at first, which is going to look and feel a little annoying. Now, you may be fooled by the medium and high density being maxed out, but I know that with this unemployment rate, it wouldn't take too many new buildings for it to actually drop. So we're gonna focus on job creation before we build out the city. There's a ton of forests out here, for now at least, before we demolish it all to build suburban sprawl. But while it's here, we might want to establish a forestry industry and build the paper factory. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and grab that. Oh wow, it is a sizable asset. That is very that's very cool, but it is gonna require a bit of terraforming. Just gonna get it placed at first and then just assess. I'll need to bring in some rail. Yeah, we've got the medium train lumberyard, specialized in the handling of wood and timber. So placing this would seem to make a ton of sense, at least. Let's just see if we would need to maybe flip it around. Move out to this small peninsula. We'll add one here as well, which I'm hopeful we can place the depot, the rail yard around. And then I actually also think I might need to build an actual rail yard to spawn more trains. Because I think the one we have in West Point is completely maxed out by now, even with the upgrade we've added. Yeah, just checking up on the West Point rail yard, and it's completely maxed out. No more upgrades to be added. So we'll need a new rail yard as well. And we might as well place it out here as part of this large stretch of heavy industry that we're probably gonna develop on these southern shores here. And Tygon's rail pack to the rescue once more, because there's a couple of custom train depots, one directional only. Okay, so some kind of location real close to these tracks. that is just a cool looking custom rail depot. Still quite sizable, but nothing like the vanilla one. So it's a very, very welcome addition. Oh yeah, very elegant solution. Let's get the forestry yard here connected up as well. And I'll connect these tracks up as well. It did add another at-grade crossing, but I think we'll manage. Now, as I'm beginning to develop this area, I think we have to switch back to some infrastructure gears, because this whole place isn't connected by anything but rail currently. And it wouldn't be hard to make a simple road connection, but I'm thinking that we need a proper connection to the main highway leading underneath the strait and into the remaining areas of the county. So the small scale suburban neighborhood I've kind of made road layout for here is probably something that I'll have to change at least a little bit. As I imagine we do need a bridge over here and maybe some additional on and off ramps. Yeah, we don't have enough on and off ramps. Big surprise. So let's just see. I don't know exactly how much traffic, obviously, we're gonna be seeing out here. I really don't. So I think for now we're just gonna try and make a bridge across here, and then we'll see if we can get some proper connections going and see just how much stuff we'll be able to handle. So yeah, we're just gonna expand on the road layout here, make it really simple, but ensure that we have good capacity for getting off this highway and getting your truck immediately to the paper factory and all the industry out here. So I think a grade would be too extreme to do a direct off-ramp to this part, so we'll probably have to kind of loop around a bit. Let's see if we can grab the 5-lane async road and use that. Should snap perfectly, and then we'll grab the 1-laner, and I think we're just gonna see if we can kind of freeform this one. Just branch out 180. So I think the first initial twist here isn't gonna be too extreme, and then we're just gonna move up from down here and get this connection going. Then for the small segment here, we should be able to just make a little upgrade just in case, and we might even make it even easier to get onto the bridge part here, although I will have to upgrade this segment as well. And that's pretty good. And then if you're moving from the actual new city or somewhere westwards onto the paper factory, I guess utilizing an off-ramp here is a good addition to this, because this is certainly a little lower capacity, at least for now. So this one should be fairly simple as well. We're just gonna freeform from around here, I guess. But we're not gonna go ground mode. We want it to be elevated, of course, and then at least 875 as we move across the train tracks. And then I think this is begging for a roundabout. One which is large enough to handle trucks. Actually, it probably needs to be a little bigger. It needs to be one of these medium ones. So we're going to just move this back a little bit. And it looks like our very first delivery truck is making its way from the soft end paper factory to the cargo harbor of Fort John, which is pretty cool. And I also think we just saw the first train spawned by the new train depot making its way to the Fort John, Chowder Bay, and maybe West Point line. Nice. I did just notice though that this delivery van is taking a pretty inefficient route. It crosses the bridge here and then it follows Cypress Street before it gets on to the highway, which really isn't ideal if we're expecting a lot of traffic from this industrial area to Fort John and the other cities. So I'm thinking we need to connect up to this highway, and I've just made sure to squeeze in a 5-lane async setup here, as you can see. And then I'm hopeful we can move underneath the train tracks and connect up to this segment. But it's pretty steep here because the actual train tracks are also lowered a bit because it needs a very smooth gradient since it's freight rail. So we're gonna have to make some sort of a big loop almost to actually move down here. So I think we've got the right things selected. We'll move to at least minus 7.5. Something like this, and then we're going to make our way below this. And then we're gonna try and connect up. And hopefully, oh man, that's 18. Wait, that's not too bad. 5.6%. That's not bad at all, actually. Okay, let's convert some elevated segments here and see how this actually looks. Well, it needs to be lowered quite a bit right here, but we should be able to manage that. It was only 5.6%, so we have a bit of wiggle room, I feel. So let's just get that lowered a bit. We'll grab this node as well, make sure that is also lowered. Yeah, this is slightly crazy, I guess. But I think it's a worthwhile investment, to be honest. It's quite a time saver and a much easier access point to the highway. So I honestly, I think it's all worth it. Also, a thing of note, these connections doesn't have to be made. The trucks are actually gonna leave out front when they handle the cargo from this train yard here. So that's just something of note if you're curious. Let's do a bit of terraforming, maybe get a few bushes and whatnot planted in here just to make it look a little better. We could also use this opportunity to get a connection going across here so that we've got a greater connection between, I guess, the two branches of this future industrial area. I know I did map this out as like a residential place with all these cul-de-sacs, but I think we're probably just going for some type of industrial development here, given the given the location being, I think, a little more fitting for that at least. So anyways, what we want to do is just bring a highway segment across here so that you can get on and off to this segment we just built. I don't know if it's just because it's getting late, but I didn't consider the fact that they'd have to cross here. Because of course they have to. I mean, this road is nice if you want to get onto the highway or you want to get out of this industrial area, but nothing else. Am I gonna have a traffic light? This is the weirdest traffic light I think I've created in a long time. Oh, I love this so much. It's probably a little unrealistic, not the complexity or the levels of it, but more that, you know, we're pretty close to like some serious water. So flooding wise, I mean, I know there's a bit of a hill here, but yeah, I don't know, but it is a fun thing to look at, and we're definitely keeping this one around. Anyways, with that little detour completed, sort of completed, I think we're ready to place another signature building out here, more industry. So let's grab the ground earth signature building because I did do a little preliminary testing and we can just about squeeze that in here. I don't remember how many, 91 jobs. I mean, it all counts. And how many was this one? 529, so that's actually pretty impressive. And with all this industrial demand, I'm gonna squeeze in a few level 5 large lot size industrial buildings out here. Alright, so we've been adding a mixture of office and industrial zonage here, which I think works fairly well. It can even be a little hard to see what's what, then a few empty surface lots and whatnot, and then I think this is going to transition into a low density neighborhood that probably isn't all that well off. I imagine the highway probably destroyed whatever a nice neighborhood was here. We can kind of see how these suburban roads were probably, previously they just kind of continued here, but obviously they had to be removed, and property prices right next to the highway kind of just fell through the bottom of the floor. So the houses were abandoned, demolished, and industry pretty much took over, because these industrial developments, they care less about the traffic noise. In fact, being close to a highway is usually a positive for an industrial development like this. So that was just a short history of this yet unnamed neighborhood. But what I think we're going to do now is we're going to finish up with connecting some freight rail to this train yard. I know we have to build some actual, lumber facilities, some forestry industry. We'll get to that in a future episode, but I think I just want to get this connected with an outside city so that we can see whether the freight trains can actually make their way around this mess. So let's grab the Cargo Railway Route tool and get an initial stop set up right here. And then let's see if we can transport goods all the way up to Boston. So we'll add the waypoint way up there, and we'll get this connection going. So it seems like it's gonna work, but if possible, I want to see if I can add a waypoint so that instead of having this reverse order, we're gonna utilize the loop we've actually built. So I don't know where I'm gonna actually, this seems to work just fine. Something like this. So as the freight rail enters to go to the yard, it's gonna select the loop. And is it gonna exit through the loop as well? Or is that something I'm gonna have to configure individually? I'm actually not sure how. I think the way it is currently, it's not gonna exit through the loop. It is unfortunately going to just kind of back out and then go this way. But maybe that's fine. Let's just hit play. I'm assuming that it's gonna spawn from this rail depot. One additional thing though, how long? I guess we should only spawn one train. 20 wagon. I think that's fine. It's probably too much for it to all fit in within the yard here, but if we just spawn a single, I can only go down to 2. Let's just see. I mean, we should just take a look, see how this is gonna work. So we've got the train, actually a couple spawning up. Oh, and they're very long. Oh my. How's this gonna work? Okay, so fortunately the entire train can fit, but since it's spawning 2, there's gonna be an immediate backup because it can't pass through this, and they're just gonna despawn and nothing's gonna work. Ah, that is annoying. Well, it's a tale as old as the City Skylines franchise. If the game has shortcomings, there's probably a mod to fix it. So introducing the transport policy adjuster, we are able to lower the assigned vehicles to just 1. And I think we're gonna grab the 20 wagon North American freight train and see whether this actually works. I also think I've managed to route around the loop here perfectly, so we'll see. Let's go. And it is heading for Boston, so why don't we just tag along for the ride? We're now moving through the port of Fort John, and if we turn the camera, we've got a massive Fort John skyline there in the background. Lots of traffic heading into town, it seems. We're now getting to this crazy part, which is also just super busy. Oh man, this is so much fun to look at. And we're actually going to go through West Point instead of Chowder Bay. That's interesting. I didn't expect that, but maybe that is actually the shortest or best route. And West Point is actually becoming quite dense. Most of West Point is zoned, so it's just been naturally leveling up all along. And I see quite a few level 5 buildings. It's a pretty cool look, this one, with the Fort John and the Queen's Cape skylines in the background there. And lots of traffic here in West Point as well. And then we're just moving through Cape Autumn and the slightly more rural setting. Now that that's sorted all out, I think it would be fitting to wrap up with a few of you guys' suggestions, because a couple of episodes ago, when we developed the incineration plant, I asked for a name for this island, and I think this suggestion by Shadow Dragon to name it Nugget Island has a pretty fun little backstory that I kind of like. It's a little weird, and I like a little weird, so we're going with that, and it actually does look like a pretty sizable nugget. A couple of 1,000 calories here at the very least. And then we're going to quietly fly over to the school we built in the very same episode. And I like this suggestion by Meg to name it the Butler Point Reserve Academy. Let's see if I can spell that. Academy, there we go. And I like the backstory as well of this Butler family in Fort John, also because I think there is an actual reference in this suggestion to Butler Street, somewhere this one. And this is very much a historic street. I mean, you can imagine, given just how narrow it is and the location, that this was one of the first like gravel roads that were actually placed when Fort John was settled. So very cool suggestion as well. And of course, just a big shout out to all of you who provide suggestions and feedback and make everything here come alive. I know there were some suggestions to kind of detail up this island a little more, but that's gonna be for a future episode. Because this is a wrap, I hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed it, because that really helps out, and consider subscribing or enabling notifications if you want to make sure you don't miss out on future episodes or all the votes we have here. I'm thinking that as the plot continues to thicken here in Easthaven County, we're gonna need several votes that, just like the most recent Batman vote, is gonna have some pretty significant consequences depending on whatever we decide on. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be wrapping up with some final cinematics. Goodbye.